Every fandom has its great mysteries, the ones argued about for decades, the questions that outlive the people asking them. Warhammer 40,000 has more than most. What's wrong with the Emperor on the Golden Throne? What the Thunder Warriors really were? Who the King in Yellow is? They are all enormous. And they all sit one level below a secret so total that most fans don't even register it as a secret, because there is nothing there to point at. 20 Primarchs were made. The Imperium remembers 18. 2, the Second Legion and the 11th, have been erased so completely that there is no name, no face, no record of their deeds, no record of their deaths, and in places, no record that the erasure ever happened. The numbers in the sequence simply skip, like a missing tooth the tongue keeps finding. This is the Imperium expending more effort to delete 2 of its own gods than it has ever spent hiding anything else. And the only thing in the galaxy worth that much erasure is a truth that would unmake the Imperium if it were ever spoken aloud. The biggest secret in Warhammer 40,000 isn't what's on the throne, it's the 2 empty chairs beside it. To understand why that claim holds, it helps to understand exactly how deep the other secrets run. Because the argument here isn't that those mysteries are small, it's that they are still visible. The Golden Throne sits beneath the Imperial Palace on Terra, and it's dying. Chris Wright's Vaults of Terra trilogy, 3 novels set in the 41st millennium, places readers inside a city of 1 trillion souls that has no idea its god is failing. Senior figures in the Adeptus Custodes and the highest circles of the Adeptus Mechanicus are depicted scrambling for solutions, hoarding knowledge, quietly assessing timelines. The machine now requires approximately 10 times as many psychers to sustain the Emperor's existence as it did when he was first interred upon it 10,000 years ago. Each day, dozens of psychers are brought to the throne in a process that drains them completely. Not unconscious, not diminished, but emptied, consumed to the last flicker of psychic life. The Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that makes faster-than-light navigation possible across the Imperium's million worlds, runs on the same power source. If the throne fails, the beacon dies. Without the beacon, the Imperium can't communicate, can't resupply, can't coordinate. A civilization of 1 trillion human souls, held together by one failing machine. And the secret of that failure is known to the Adeptus Custodes, to the Senatorum Imperialis, to ranking officials of the Mechanicus. Many hands carry this secret. It's an extinction-level fact, and it's a fact that exists in the record, hidden by classification rather than by deletion. The Thunder Warriors are older and uglier. Before the Space Marines existed, the Emperor built warriors called the Legio Cataegus for the Unification Wars on Terra. Transhuman soldiers, larger and more powerful than the Astartes who came after, but genetically unstable, prone to rapid and agonizing degeneration. They won Terra in his name. They put down the warlords and the tyrants across a shattered Earth and handed the Emperor dominion over his home world. Official Imperial chronicles record that all remaining Thunder Warriors died heroically at the final battle of the Unification Wars at Mount Ararat, approximately 669 M30. The manner is portrayed as glorious, the sacrifice as willing. That is the lie. The truth, established across Black Library sources including Graham McNeil's The Outcast Dead, is that the Emperor ordered their systematic extermination the moment the Astartes were ready to replace them. His own servants carried it out. The Warhammer 40K wiki records the outcome plainly. The Thunder Warriors had been destroyed by their own creator, a secret skillfully concealed from the people of the Imperium for more than 10,000 Terran years. A precedent.
A proof of method. The Emperor had already demonstrated, once, that he would erase loyal instruments the moment they became inconvenient. But here is what the Thunder Warrior's secret actually is. It's a secret about what happened to them. The Legio Cataegus existed. They have a name in the codices. The category of their existence is preserved. What was buried was their fate, the manner and authorization of their deaths. You can point at the Thunder Warriors. They are there in the lore. The cover-up concerns only the final chapter of their story, not the story itself. The King in Yellow occupies a different and narrower corner of the mystery. The phrase originates in Robert W. Chambers' 1895 fiction, adopted by the Warhammer community and eventually given loose canonical grounding. Dan Abnett's novel Penitent strongly implies the title belongs to Constantine Valdor, the first chief custodian, the Emperor's most trusted guardian, now missing from the 41st millennium record in ways that suggest he didn't simply retire. The full implications of what Valdor has become, or what role he might be playing in the current era, are debated. It's a genuine mystery with a probable candidate at its center. You can point at Valdor. His name is in the books. His history is documented. The uncertainty concerns what he has done since, not whether he existed. 3 secrets, then: a failing machine, a buried atrocity, a missing guardian. Together, they represent the deepest visible layer of what the Imperium hides from itself. And the word visible is the crucial one, because visible means pointable. Each of these secrets leaves you something to touch, something to name, something to research. The 2 empty Legion slots in the sequence leave nothing of the kind. What distinguishes the erasure of the 2 and 11 from every other great secret in the setting isn't merely its depth, it's its completeness. And the completeness is itself the evidence. Open any full listing of the original 20 Space Marine legions and follow the sequence from the beginning. Legion 1, the Dark Angels, under Lion L. Johnson, a loyalist. Legion 2, redacted. Primarch, redacted. Allegiance, redacted. Legion 3, the Emperor's Children, under Fulgrim, a traitor. The sequence continues: White Scars, Space Wolves, Imperial Fists, until it reaches Legion 10, the Iron Hands under Ferrus Manus. Then Legion 11, redacted, redacted, redacted. Legion 12, the World Eaters under Angron. The Wargamer Guide to Space Marine Legions lists them precisely this way, not with an explanation for the gaps, not with a note reading "lost to history" or "destroyed in battle" or "records unavailable." The column simply says "redacted" 3 times over for each of 2 numbered positions, and then continues as if the sequence were complete. The silence in a published guide is more eloquent than any explanation could be, because it shows you what the erasure looks like from the outside. A table where 2 rows exist only as placeholders, containing nothing except the confirmation that something was removed. The earliest explicit source is Games Workshop's own 2nd edition publications from the 1990s. The Codex Imperialis and the 2nd edition Codex Ultramarines both include the 2 and 11 in Legion rolls with a specific notation. All records expunged from the library, deleted following the heresy. 2 words are doing the essential work there: expunged and deleted. These aren't passive verbs. Records aren't expunged by neglect, by time, by the natural entropy of a 10,000-year bureaucratic history. They are expunged by someone who decided to expunge them. The distinction between a lost record and a deleted record is the distinction between an accident and a choice, and the Codex Imperialis describes a choice. High Gothic has a name for the process carried to its furthest extent: damnatio memoriae, condemnation of memory.
Lore texts within the setting describe what this process looks like when an edict of obliteration is applied. The systematic and remorseless destruction of every record, every monument, every mention of the condemned, until they become not figures in history, but holes in it. That phrase, holes in history, is the most precise description of what has been done. The Warhammer 40K wiki identifies what was enacted on the 2nd and 11th Legions as the most successful edict of obliteration ever carried out by the Imperium. Most successful. Not a standard application, not a notable example. The furthest the process has ever gone against any target in the entire history of a civilization spanning the galaxy. In the rare texts that acknowledge these legions at all, in-universe scholars use a collective phrase for what happened to both Primarchs: the forgotten and the purged. This is a historiographical shorthand, not a formal individual designation. Both Primarchs share the label together. The two components of that phrase carry distinct implications. Purged suggests violence, active elimination, a threat addressed by force of arms. Forgotten suggests something quieter, a shame not burned but buried, set aside by deliberate inattention rather than execution. The phrasing implies both processes may have applied to both sons. Aaron Dembski-Bowden's novel, The First Heretic, provides a specific scene that crystallizes the physical dimension of what was done. On Monarchia, the great memorial city, the 20 Primarch plinths stand as monuments to the Emperor's sons. 2 of them are vacant, not destroyed, not toppled or defaced or replaced with other carvings. Vacant, as if the architects had built them empty from the beginning, or as if whoever came after had removed what stood there with a care so complete that no trace of removal remained. The characters present in that scene don't speak of those 2 absent brothers. Not a reference, not a glance, not a lowered voice acknowledging that something should be there. The silence around the vacant plinths is maintained by apparent unspoken agreement among the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And the erasure predates the Horus Heresy itself. Available canonical evidence places the disappearance of the 2nd and 11 at least 43 standard years before the drop site massacre at Isstvan V, the military opening of the Civil War. The heresy broke open with the slaughter at Isstvan III and the ambush at Isstvan V. The lost Primarchs were already gone before any of that. The Emperor erased 2 of his sons not under crisis conditions, not in the chaos of a civilization collapsing into civil war, but during the Great Crusade, while the Imperium was at the height of its expansion, while all 20 legions were strategically necessary, while the Emperor had every reason to want 2 more armies of superhuman warriors pushing his frontier outward. The timing matters. This was a deliberate pre-war decision made from a position of institutional security, not a panicked wartime cover-up executed under duress. Modern Legion documentation deepens the picture further. Many post-heresy imperial records list the legions by name only, abandoning the numerical sequence altogether. In those documents, the absence of the 2nd and 11 becomes invisible. Not marked slots showing as missing, but a list that runs 1 to 20, with 2 numbers simply absent and no notation attached to explain the gap. The Imperium erased the legions. Then, it erased the evidence of the erasure. The omission hides itself, which requires a second level of institutional effort beyond the original deletion. Someone had to decide that even the acknowledgement of absence was too dangerous to allow. A cover-up costs something. Not just the initial decision, but the sustained execution of that decision across centuries and millennia. Resources, coordination, institutional machinery, active maintenance of silence against the natural entropy of time and the natural curiosity of 10,000 years of scholars and archivists. Institutions don't spend that cost on secrets that don't matter. They spend it in proportion to the danger of the truth. cataloging what machinery the Imperium turned on the memory of the 2nd and 11th legions makes the scale of the underlying truth legible. Begin with the most clarifying comparison available. The traitor legions are still in the record. The word-bearers lit the fires of the Horus heresy. The Night Lords terrorized civilian populations across entire sectors. The Iron Warriors besieged loyalist worlds. The World Eaters slaughtered by the billion under their chaos-maddened Primarch. The Death Guard spread plague across holy ground. The Thousand Sons turned sorcery on their own brothers. The Emperor's children descended into excess that beggars description. The Alpha Legion sowed deception and ruin across the Crusade and beyond. The Luna Wolves, renamed Sons of Horus, led the entire insurrection. 9 legions, the 9 worst betrayers in the history of humanity, responsible for a civil war that killed soldiers, civilians, and Primarchs in numbers that defy accounting. Every one of them is listed in Imperial rolls today as excommunicate traitorous. Their names are spoken. Their Primarchs are documented. Their heresy is recorded in excruciating detail, repeated across codex after codex as a permanent condemnation. The Imperium chose eternal public shame for the 9 worst traitors it has ever produced. It chose silence for the 2nd and 11th. That choice is the clearest statement the available evidence makes. Being remembered forever as the most catastrophic enemies of humanity is preferable to being remembered as whatever the 2 and 11 were. The treachery that nearly destroyed the species is on the record. Whatever the lost legions represent isn't. The designation most successful edict of obliteration ever enacted implies a comparison class, other edicts, against other targets that were less successful. Those lesser applications left traces. A name surviving in a forbidden archive on a distant world. A monument fragment excavated centuries later. A name preserved in marginalia that no one examined for 1,000 years. For the 2 and 11, none of that exists in any accessible Imperial record. No name, no face, no surviving portrait, no gene seed lineage officially acknowledged in any Space Marine chapter across the entire current canon. 2 complete legions, the genetic material capable of generating successor chapters through centuries of subsequent foundings, the biological heritage of tens of thousands of transhuman warriors left no officially acknowledged institutional descendants whatsoever. Either that gene seed was completely and permanently destroyed, or it survived into chapters whose lineage records have been deliberately falsified. Both possibilities require sustained active management across 10 millennia to maintain. Neither manages itself. The physical world had to be altered. 2 Primarch plinths stand vacant on Monarchia. Stone does not absent itself. The monuments had to be physically modified or emptied, and then no carving, plaque, or notation of any kind was permitted to explain the vacancy. The silence extends to the architecture. The administratum, the largest bureaucracy in human history, with a canonical function that includes revising subversive records of imperial history into more reverent versions, had to process the erasure through its record systems. The Inquisition, with its powers to seize, destroy, and alter archives empire-wide, had to enforce the silence against anyone who looked too closely. The Adeptus Custodes appear in heresy-era texts, having quietly ordered the removal of those who possessed dangerous knowledge.
Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor's regent, his closest advisor, the second most powerful figure in the early Imperium, appears in at least one canonical image with skulls bearing the numbers of the 2 lost Primarchs, suggesting his personal apparatus oversaw the process at the highest level. Every layer of institutional machinery available to the early Imperium ran against the memory of the Second and 11 legions. Multiple institutions, multiple mechanisms, coordinated across the physical, archival, genetic, and psychic dimensions of the record. And it ran further and more completely than the Imperium has ever directed any comparable effort against any other target. There is a further dimension that does not appear in any list of deleted documents or expunged records, but is perhaps the most striking evidence of the scope of what was done. The chaos-corrupted Primarchs had every conceivable incentive to expose Imperial secrets. Lorgar authored theological works designed to destabilize the Emperor's authority. Magnus possessed access to forbidden knowledge accumulated across centuries. Horus sought to break every institution that sustained the Emperor's legitimacy. All of them, inaccessible canonical sources, spoke of the heresy, of the Emperor's failures, of the Imperium's compromised foundations. None of them, in any available text, ever weaponized whatever they might have known about the two absent brothers. They had motive, they had reach, they had, in Lorgar's case, an explicit project dedicated to exposing uncomfortable truths about the Emperor. What they apparently lacked was the knowledge, or the capacity to speak it. Something suppressed this one specific category of information even in the minds of individuals who had every reason to use it and every capability to do so. The Thunder Warriors comparison remains the sharpest way to articulate what distinguishes this erasure from every other. The Emperor exterminated an entire class of loyal soldiers and concealed that truth for 10,000 years. But the Legio Catigus has a name. The fact of their existence is in the codices. What was hidden was their fate, the manner of their deaths, the identity of the order that ended them. You can research the Thunder Warriors and find them. The cover-up concerns only what happened to them, not whether they happened. For the Second and 11, existence itself is gone. Their identities, their deeds, their fates, and the act of their erasure are all sealed in the same silence. The Thunder Warrior's secret is about the final chapter. The Second and 11 secret is about the whole book. What follows are theories, unconfirmed speculations, some with partial textual footing in the lore, some constructed from the shape of the absence alone. None is established canon. None has been confirmed by Games Workshop or any Black Library publication. They appear here for a specific reason, not because any single one of them is correct, but because every one of them, if true, represents a truth the Imperium couldn't survive acknowledging. The frame matters more than the answer. The first candidate carries the broadest intuitive appeal. The premise: the Emperor, or the Mechanicum, through some administrative error during the Primarch project, assigned each of 2 Primarchs to the wrong legion, placed one son at the head of a force bred from another's genetic template. The cover-up would exist to protect the theological image of a god who can't, by the doctrinal foundations of the entire Imperium, be capable of error. If the Emperor of mankind misassigned 2 of his 20 supreme military instruments, the flagship project on which the entire Great Crusade depended, the implications for a trillion-soul civilization built on his infallibility would be genuinely destabilizing. No canonical text offers direct support for this premise. No breadcrumbs survive in the available record.
Its appeal is entirely structural. It explains why an administrative mistake would require a divine cover-up rather than a correction, and it targets the one vulnerability the Imperium's theology can't absorb. The second candidate operates on absence rather than error.
The canonical language around the lost Primarchs consistently reaches for terms like gone and absent and separate tragedies rather than dead or killed or destroyed. In Dan Abnett's The End and the Death, Volume 2, Ferrus Manus, who is himself dead, speaking in the context of the heresy's final hours, refers to those like himself who have fallen, and separately to those who have become, in his phrasing, other things. The community interpretation, and it's an interpretation, not a confirmed reading, is that other things may reach toward the lost. If the 2nd and 11th Primarchs aren't dead but imprisoned, exiled, or transformed and still existing somewhere in the 41st millennium, then the Imperium isn't merely hiding a historical event. It's actively maintaining the containment of two demigods, right now, in a civilization already struggling to survive. The reason for that containment, whatever they knew or were or represented, would need to be more dangerous than admitting they are held beneath the imperial palace. One theory proposes that one or both Primarchs were blanks, psychic nulls, individuals with no warp presence, generating an anti-psychic field that disturbs psychers and psycher-adjacent entities in proximity. No direct canonical evidence supports this. A structural objection also exists. Primarchs are, by their fundamental nature, warp-infused beings, each carrying a shard of the Emperor's own psychic imprint. A blank Primarch would represent a profound metaphysical contradiction. A son the Emperor may not have been able to locate through the warp, communicate with, or fully perceive. The community has noted the logical tension in this directly. But a Primarch-level blank, if such a thing could exist, would destabilize the Brotherhood by its mere presence, generating a field of psychic negation that would affect the Emperor himself, potentially disrupting the very mechanisms by which the Primarch project was designed to function. The perpetual theory draws on a confirmed canonical precedent. Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders, is an established perpetual, killed multiple times across the Horus Heresy novels, resurrecting each time, demonstrably impossible to permanently destroy. No source suggests either lost Primarch shares this trait, but if one did, if a son of the Emperor couldn't be silenced through death, then the only available solutions would be eternal imprisonment or eternal falsification of the record. The underlying truth, whatever that Primarch knew or was, would need active suppression not for a generation, but indefinitely, for as long as the subject persisted and the Imperium needed to be protected from it. A Primarch raised by Xenos rather than by a human culture would be an ideological catastrophe inside the framework of the imperial truth, which placed human supremacy at its absolute foundation. All 18 known Primarchs matured among human populations, however alien those cultures sometimes were. Angron on Nuceria, Magnus on Prospero, Vulcan on Nocturne. Cultural divergence was tolerated and corrected. Lorgar's religion earned official censure. Magnus's sorcery earned punishment and ultimately destruction. A genuine Xenos allegiance, Xenos identity, or Xenos-derived value system would need to be categorically more severe than those to justify historical non-existence rather than eternal condemnation. No canonical text places either lost Primarch among Xenos. The theory rests entirely on the severity implied by the response. Of all the theories, the one with the most direct canonical footing involves the Rangdan Xenocides. Over 300,000 Astartes from 9 legions were deployed against the Rangdan, described across Forge World and Horus Heresy sources as one of the most costly and terrifying campaigns of the entire Great Crusade. The Rangdan themselves are described with a careful vagueness, suggesting the nature of the threat is itself part of what can't be fully acknowledged. The xenocides occur in the chronology before the 11th Primarch had been found, positioning the timing most directly around the Second Legion. Forge World and Heresy-era texts strongly imply one of the Lost Legions participated in that campaign. 9 legions are mentioned. 4 of the 9 aren't named in available sources, and the historical record of the xenocides is itself obscured, treated with the same institutional care that surrounds the Lost Legions. The timing and the omissions run parallel. Whether the Second Legion was annihilated in catastrophic defeat, a loss the Emperor couldn't admit to the broader crusade, or whether what the Rangdan were and what they did to those who fought them produced something the Imperium could never allow to be described, the erasure of the xenocides and the erasure of the Legion appear to be the same event, sealed with the same lock. Aaron Dembski-Bowden addressed the most popular alternative theory directly. Community speculation has long proposed that the Space Wolves, the Emperor's traditional instrument of last resort against other legions, were sent to destroy the lost Primarchs. Dembski-Bowden stated explicitly that the Space Wolves didn't exterminate the lost legions, because that would constitute an answer, and in his framing, there isn't allowed to be an answer. The statement closes one theory. It also confirms that a specific, correct explanation exists. Something happened that has a verifiably wrong version, which means it also has an actual one. A genuine mystery without any correct answer does not require incorrect answers to be explicitly excluded. None of those theories, however, engages the most structurally specific fact about this subject. Not one erasure, 2 legions, 2 Primarchs, 2 of 20 sons subjected to the most complete act of historical destruction the Imperium has ever carried out, receiving equal treatment, ending in the same total absence. No canonical source establishes any connection between the 2nd and 11th Primarchs during their lifetimes. No scene in any available text depicts them interacting, communicating, conspiring, or acknowledging each other. They share no documented alliance, no depicted conflict, no apparent shared characteristic that the record preserves. Their legions operated independently. Their homeworlds are unknown. Their relationships to the other Primarchs aren't documented. The only bond between them is what happened to them both, with equal totality, under what appears to be the same institutional decision. One incident is an incident, one embarrassing son, one inconvenient truth, one failed experiment. These are isolated events with isolated causes, manageable in isolation. Historical institutions regularly produce single anomalies and address them individually, with proportionate responses scaled to individual circumstances. 2 erasures of equal totality suggest something different. 2 instances, treated identically, points toward not 2 separate incidents that happen to require the same extreme response, but a category. A type of knowledge the Imperium identified as existentially incompatible with its continued functioning, and erased wherever it found an instance of it. The canon explicitly acknowledges 20 Primarchs, no more and no fewer. No source suggests additional sons were ever created, so of 20, exactly 2 required this treatment, not condemnation to the roles as excommunicate traitoris, not exile and eternal shame, but historical non-existence. 2 is the smallest count that implies a pattern rather than an accident.
It's also a specific number that suggests a specific category of unspeakable truth. One instance would be an outlier, but 2 instances with equal outcomes suggest the Imperium found a type, recognized it, and erased every example.
The canonical record of the remaining heresy era provides a quiet confirmation of what that kind of thoroughness requires. Imperial historians in the 41st millennium have no concrete records of the lost Primarchs beyond rumors accessible only in forbidden texts. Surviving Primarchs in the heresy novels apparently carry no knowledge of what their absent brothers did or who they were. Even the enemy, the chaos-corrupted Primarchs with millennia of accumulated forbidden knowledge, never appears to have leveraged this particular secret. The silence is consistent across every source, every faction, every era. That kind of consistency, maintained across 10,000 years and across institutions that actively opposed each other, does not happen through passive neglect. It requires active enforcement, continuously applied, an ongoing threat requiring ongoing suppression. Whatever truth these Primarchs embodied hasn't decayed into irrelevance over 10 millennia. The Imperium still guards the empty space because it still believes something catastrophic could fill it. The category framing produces the most unsettling available inference. If the erasure had happened once, it would be about those individuals, their specific deeds, their specific dangerousness, the specific events that made them impossible to acknowledge. Twice, with equal totality, shifts the logic. The decision wasn't primarily about the individuals at all. It was about what those individuals knew, what they found, what they were capable of saying if allowed to exist in any form, in any record accessible to any future scholar, any future archivist, any future Primarch asking the wrong question at the wrong moment. The 2nd and 11th Primarchs may not have been erased because of what they did. They may have been erased because of what they could have told someone. Once the mystery is framed that way, the silence changes its meaning entirely. The absence of two stories isn't a gap left by time. It's a deliberate shape. It was built. It was maintained. And it's still being maintained right now in a civilization of 1 trillion souls that does not know it's being protected from two names, two faces, and whatever those two individuals carried in their minds when someone decided the cost of allowing that knowledge to circulate was higher than the cost of emptying 2 chairs at the Emperor's table forever. The hole in the record is the exact size and shape of something that would end the Imperium if spoken aloud. You can spend your whole life in this hobby arguing about the throne, the Thunder Warriors, the things that whisper in the warp. Those are real mysteries and they are worth the argument. But every one of them is a thing you can point at. The biggest secret in Warhammer 40,000 is the one you can't. 2 Primarchs, 2 legions, 2 of the Emperor's own sons, deleted so completely that the deletion itself is gone, leaving only a silence the exact size and shape of the truth that would burn the Imperium down. The Emperor made 20 sons. The Imperium will let you remember 18. And the harder you look at the 2 empty chairs, the more you realize the Imperium isn't hiding what happened to them. It's hiding what they found out. Subscribe for more stories like this.